This is the Brown Duke Gun Show. My name is JP Garcia, joined here today with Austin Menard. We are 2 of 3 of the co-hosts today. Brandon is out doing nationals things. Yep. So, good luck to him. And hope he brings home the gold for Sentry.
Yep.
Speaking of, this is the official podcast for Sentry Defense Indoor Range in Youngsville, Louisiana. If you're looking for a place to shoot, come shoot with us. Today, we are going to talk about something that Austin, Brandon, and all the instructors at Sentry, and probably instructors outside of our range, talk about all the time, is just how to overcome shooting fears. And a lot of times, this is with new shooters, people who just purchased a firearm, or even folks who may have firearms, right? But they're not super trained up, and they're not super comfortable, right? And we talk about topics similar to this, but I think overcoming fear, it's something that not a lot of people dig into, right?
No, and it's probably 70 to 80% of teaching a new shooter, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentals are the most important part, but they can get fundamentals very easily once they overcome this initial fear that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it, and the fears are justified, right? Because this is a thing that's blowing up right in front. There's a big explosion, at hand's length from your face.
Yep.
Right. There's also clearly people know what guns are for. Yep. Not just for recreation and hunting and things of that nature, but also the the self-defense aspect of it. That worries a lot of people and all of that, and so it's very easy to get wrapped around the handle of the emotion of shooting. And I find that a lot of times with brand new shooters, it's hard to unwrap that, right?
100%.
So, I guess getting into that, the first thing, we can go over some of the common fears, right? First one I can think of is the fear of recoil. Because you see these movies, you see Dirty Harry, you see all of this stuff with a 44 mag. I remember I had a buddy in Houston. I was teaching him how to shoot a long, long time ago, and started with 9mm. At an indoor range, super controlled atmosphere, all of this stuff. He was clearly, a new shooter. He, never really shot a gun before, in any sort of sense. And so, first time he pulled the trigger. So what I'll usually do is I'll load the mag with 1 round and let them pull the trigger. So it's like, okay, so if they have their fingers still on the trigger, it's not going to do anything. Yeah. And he put the gun down, he fired the round, put the gun down, looked at me. He goes, "That's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be."
Every time.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
He closed his eyes. He dipped the muzzle.
Yeah. And a lot of that stems from it's funny how congruent new shooters are as far as where their fears of recoil come from. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, one of them is movies or social media where they probably never fired a gun before. Mm-hmm. So all of their if they've never fired a gun before, their knowledge or their fear comes from movies, like you said, Dirty Harry, or seeing these giant guns in movies, and they blow people back, and when somebody gets shot by them in a movie, they fly across the room. So that's one of the fears. Or another extremely common one is when they were first exposed to firearms, it was either in what I'll call an uncontrolled environment where you have a husband or a father of the person that was like, "Hey, here, we're in a field, shoot my gun,
Yeah.
And there's no training, there's no grip, there's nothing, and it's a 45 Colt, and they pull the trigger and the gun snaps back and almost flies out of their hand, and it's that's a miserable first experience. Mm-hmm. Or husband bought the wife a 38 special airframe, fits in your pocket, pull the trigger, the thing almost flies out of your hand. Yeah. So that's what we see a lot of as instructors is that was either my initial exposure to it, or here was my first experience shooting. And then it's every gun is like this, so I don't want to do this anymore. And it's we have to make them understand that, not that you were taught incorrectly, but you were in what we call an uncontrolled environment, right? Sure. The person that was showing it to you wasn't an instructor, and it's not their fault. They just kind of gave you a first bad experience, or if it's not an actual experience, these thoughts that you have because of movies they're not realistic. They're for dramatic effect, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times when people go for their first time, at least in my experience, they'll go with a group and it's, okay, there are these 5 or 6 people who own guns and they're going to go shoot and they're going to go have fun. And they have invited me. This is a perfect time to go. And, and there are all these crazy guns, and there's, and they'll fire off maybe a round of some 9 or something like that, and then they'll grab the 44 mag.
Yep.
And it's like, oh geez.
Yep.
Or a lot of times, and this was crazy. When I was doing my concealed carry class in Houston, I had in part of the class were 2 ladies whose husband sent them to the class with a 45, a full size 45. Mm-hmm. And the wives were saying, well, my husband sent me with this because they wanted me to learn how to shoot this.
Yep.
And it's like, have you ever fired a gun before? No. Like, oh geez, a 45?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and a 45, once you get used to it, it's fine. But
yep.
Not
for the first time.
No.
Yeah. You'll never do it again.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. They're scared of it, whatever, the whole thing is a complete mess.
Yep.
So, I mean, fear of recoil for sure. It's a real thing.
Yeah. So, so that's how the fear of recoil kind of comes to be. And, now we can talk about like, how do we overcome this, as instructors and as, friends to these people. Mm-hmm. And I think you pretty much touched on it. This is a simple one. It's just explaining to them that, look, your first experience was either in an uncontrolled environment or your understanding of recoil is from dramatic movie experiences, right? And the way that we overcome it is exactly like you said. It's, the first thing that we usually do is 2 different methods. One, if it's somebody that I think can handle the recoil, like a little bit bigger person, if it's not like a little bitty lady, because what I try not to do is I try not to start them with a 22. If the fear is so bad, I'll do that because that really does help. And I had a lesson a couple weeks back where like that was my only option. Like she wasn't going to touch a 9mm until she was able to shoot a 22, until she was able to shoot something that she understood that she can control it, right? Like she wasn't going to touch it. But let's say like they're like, yeah, I'm okay with trying this 9mm that my husband bought me, or it's my gun. So indoctrination too is one thing that I learned as an instructor that works really well for me. So it's like, hey, look, you're going to stand right next to me, whichever non-ejector side, so you don't get hit by the brass. And I'm going to shoot this gun with you standing right next to me. Yep. And I'll either, I'll shoot it normally. Sometimes I'll shoot it one-handed, and I'll show them like, look, this gun is not going anywhere. And I'm not the strongest guy. Again, it's like, see, it's not bad. Your perception of recoil is yada, yada, yada. And then same thing, 1 round. And it's like, we'll set up a target. I don't care if you hit it. All I care about is just squeeze that trigger, let the gun surprise you. And then every single time the gun goes boom, they look at me and they're like, oh my God. Yeah. Like that was nothing. It's like, yeah, you can do this. It's nothing. Right. And like, that's 9mm is not a baby caliber. Like that was, this is a full-size handgun. You got this, So that one's, I'll say, an easy one to fix with the correct teaching techniques. Like if you take someone and throw them into the range and be like, hey, today you're going to figure this out, it's like they're not going to do it, right? Especially because they don't have the proper technique, and that all goes into it. But that's probably like 80% of fears that we get is fear of this gun's going to come back and hit me in the face.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you and I have the same technique for brand new shooters, right? You'll have a target. I'll have them aim at a berm.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're not aiming.
Yeah.
We're just pulling the trigger to feel what this feels like.
Yep.
And I think that's a perfect way to get around the fear of recoil, because to your point, it's not as bad as people think, right? And you see that particularly in pistols, but then also I'm sure you see it with ARs.
Oh,
right?
yeah, 100%.
Because the news tells you an AR is a bazooka.
Yeah, it's a bazooka. And then they're big too. Like they are big. Yeah. And then like even just like recently we do like for Sentry manufacturing, we do golf tournaments. Mm-hmm. We have a golf ball launcher. And so like people think it's like the coolest thing ever. Like people are calling us and they're like, hey, can you please come to our golf tournament with your golf ball launcher? Like we just got back from one a couple of days ago where like somebody called me and was like, please come to this tournament with your golf ball launcher. Like we'll pay for you to come, yada, yada, yada. So, but it's the same thing, right? Like, people will get there and like, it's like grown men and they're like, oh, I've shot ARs my whole life, but I'm not shooting that thing. It's like, why? They're like, oh, it's going to have a lot of recoil. It's like, dude, it shoots a golf ball.
It's the same thing.
So like, it's just like when guns get big, people or make loud noises, people are like, they get scared of them. But yeah. So yeah, fear of recoil, definitely a super common one. Like I said, probably 80% of the initial fear that we get as far as new shooters or people that have had bad first experiences.
Yeah, for sure. So then, leaving that particular fear of recoil, the next one that I can think of is fear of AD, fear of accidental discharge, right? Because people, they don't understand the firearm. Absolutely. They don't have great trigger discipline, and they don't want to accidentally shoot.
They don't want to be that person.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that also gets fixed with what we were talking about initially.
Exactly.
Right. Is that, okay, well, if you don't know, you're not comfortable, load one round in the mag, or if you're shooting a revolver, put one in the cylinder.
Yep.
And pull the trigger.
Pull the trigger and then show me what you do after the fact. That's exactly how we do it. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people, what makes a lot of people feel comfortable is that when I get new shooters, and this is pretty common amongst instructors, and I'm sure, like we do it with USPSA as well, where when you come into the range, they're freaking out, right? Because they're like, okay, I'm going to go to this range. They're going to slap some earmuffs on me, and they're going to throw me into this range with a gun, and I'm going to have to figure this out. And then they walk in the door, and they're like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Austin. I'm going to be your instructor today. Follow me. We're going to go in the classroom. And they're like, well, what are we going to the classroom for? It's like, oh, we're going to be in there for 30 minutes before I ever hand you a gun.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, you're going to teach me. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to just throw you in there. Yeah. And they're like, okay, well, this is a little bit better. And I think that fear of AD gets kind of toned down, especially with communication and with the understanding of firearm safety. And I don't let any new shooters, or even if it's, I've shot before and I'm uncomfortable with it, we're starting from ground zero, where we're going to go learn the 4 firearm safety rules. And before you touch a gun, you're going to be able to recite those to me. Right. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have handled like a plastic gun, and you're going to aim at a wall, and you're going to say bang, 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 and show me what you do after it. Right. And then when we get in the range, same thing, 1 round in the chamber. I'll get you used to the recoil and show me what you do with the gun afterwards. Finger comes off the trigger and they put the gun down. They look at me. It's like, awesome. Like, that's perfect. Yeah. You're not going to have an AD because you have an understanding of firearm safety. And then they're like, oh, okay, as long as my finger's not on the trigger, I'm keeping it pointed in a safe direction, yada, 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 I can't have an AD. And then it's immediately like, I got this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so to take that one step further, so when we train people, or when we give people the safety briefing for competition, a lot of times what I'll do, and every RO kind of does it a little bit differently, but so what I'll do is I'll actually work dry fire into the safety brief for competition, right? And part of that is, walking around, going forward, going backwards with your trigger finger off the trigger kind of thing with the yellow guns.
Yep.
And I'll have them walk all around the classroom, and okay, is your muzzle in the trap? Is your finger off the trigger? Right. And so we'll do that. And then also what I like to do with new shooters is I'll come up with a stage plan for them.
Yeah.
In the very first match, it's like, okay, you're going to see people doing all kinds of crazy stuff. This is what you're doing today. And right before they walk up to the line, probably, when they're in the hole, what's your plan to go here? And they'll tell me the plan. They're going to go shoot the thing. So like, okay, well, what's your plan with your muzzle and what's your plan with your finger?
Yep.
And, just to drive it home that, hey, we've practiced this, they started with lessons with you guys, they're moving up. Now they're into the competition realm. And then we're always still reinforcing, where's your finger go? Yep. Where's your muzzle go? That kind of thing. So that, as much as we can to drive home, good habits so that they don't have that AD.
Yeah. And when I used to shoot a lot on Thursdays, I thought that was probably one of the most impressive things as an instructor, because I'm not a USPSA RO. Mm-hmm. I understand how it works, but I'm not a certified RO, so, sure. But that to me was probably one of the most impressive things, was when you guys would take somebody that's never done USPSA before, mm-hmm. and it's like they come up to the stage and their entire goal is to run the stage safely. It's like, this is the way that people should be taught, because like they're understanding, they're like, okay, I'm going to engage the targets. And then mentally they're saying, okay, finger's going to come off the trigger. I'm going to point the gun down range, and then I'm going to move slowly. The entire goal is to finish that stage safely. Like, that to me was like so impressive, that you can take, especially when like on nights when we have like 5 new shooters, and like these new shooters are doing better than some of the guys that have done it for a while, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, that's so impressive. And it speaks a lot to the safety culture, one that we have at the range and that USPSA it kind of, I don't want to say enforces, but because it's up to the RO, you know, but the ROs that we have as far as at Sentry, and within our USPSA community. Like that's so impressive that you can get a new USPSA shooter to run through a stage safely and not have any safety issues.
Sure.
So it speaks volumes to the way that you're teaching people before they ever get their hands on the gun. And that's why we love classroom teaching.
Sure.
And it's not a lot. And that's one thing that I express to people when I tell them like, hey, look, we're going to go in the classroom. A lot of them are like, oh God, like I want to go shoot. It's like, look, this is going to be like 15 minutes. And by the end of it, you're going to be way better. You know, you're going to understand why we did this and you're going to feel better about what you're about to do.
Right. Well, and as an instructor too, you know, again, I'm not a professional instructor like you guys. I don't do that for a living, but I can only imagine like the last thing I want to do is have somebody off the street come in and ask me to teach them how to do it. And we go straight to the range.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'd put on a bulletproof vest. Yeah. Like we have some of the security companies and the instructors wear vests. And it's like, dude, I get it. Like, because you guys are not doing classroom time. Like I get it.
Yeah.
You know, so I could only imagine. But yeah, so it's interesting how like first time shooters, and then even when you go into like the competition world, the aspect of initial safety training is the same, and the way that you handle it has the same outcome.
Yeah.
So I think it speaks volumes to people that if you're a first time shooter and you're wanting to get into shooting, do not let somebody convince you to just be thrown to the wolves and either go to the range by yourself and just try to shoot, or go with somebody that's not a certified instructor.
Yeah.
They may know what they're talking about, and there are people out there that are around guns a lot and they can probably teach you, but please at least spend 15 minutes with a certified instructor, because you'll feel better about it and people around you will be better for it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add to that just a little bit that a lot of times the people that you would think would be a good instructor are not good instructors. Like, so people who carry guns for a living, they may have learned how to shoot a gun, but they don't know how to teach people. No. There's a special, and I'm calling out, in a sense, I'm calling out the law enforcement folks and the military folks. Yep. They've been trained on how to shoot a gun, how to, be it a rifle or a pistol. Yep. But I can tell you, and you know this too, is that the people who are instructing those folks have had to take extra training to be a teacher.
That's right. Their job is not to shoot. Like military and law enforcement, that's the part of the job that they hope they never have to do. Right. Their job is to police and to execute military tactics. Right. Mm-hmm. So we get this all the time, is when if we're teaching a lot of law enforcement, and I've never taught like a government or military entity, but Brandon has, and I'm sure that he would reiterate this point, that we get challenged. It's like we'll have guys that are in the class that are like, we'll tell them like, hey, try this, and they're kind of like look at us like, dude, I'm a police officer. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand that. You're a better police officer than me, 100%. I know nothing about being a police officer, but I'm a better shooter than you. It's like we don't have to sit here and challenge each other. Like, everybody needs to be coachable. We always talk about that, and even as instructors, we talk about that. If another instructor is instructing me, even if I don't agree with the way they're teaching, I can take something out of it, whether it be a new tactic or even a way not to do something. Sure. So, you're 100% correct in saying that, if you have like a family member or somebody that's in the law enforcement community or was in the military, that does not immediately certify them as an instructor for firearms, because it's a very small percentage of what they do. Yeah. And we see this in post qualifications. We in the past, so I think post qualifications are on a schedule, like a calendar schedule, because right now we're teaching so many officers post, and so it's
so rewind. What's post?
So it's a shooting qualification that officers have to pass in order to be able to carry a firearm. Okay. So right now is a time of year where we have instructors, we have police officers coming in, the humble ones, and they're saying hey, I need help. I'm struggling with post. Can you guys give me some tips and tricks? And then they go out there and they shoot post. And so they must have been like this past week, because we've had a bunch of them come back to the range and they're like, dude, I beat everybody. It's like, yeah, because you learned from a certified instructor who, like, we're shooters. That's what we do. You know, I'm not a police officer. I don't know how to write a ticket. I don't know how to fill out a report, you know, but I'm a shooter, you know? I think you definitely drive a point home there that there's very little things that certify somebody to be an instructor, even if they're shooting a lot, because they're going to try to drive home points to you that they might understand from an advanced standpoint, whereas you're at ground zero. And that's like that kind of classroom stuff where, like, we have to start here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll even take that to the competition world, right? Yep. So when we have, Grandmaster in USPSA is the highest rank that you can be, right? The highest classification. Top of the food chain, that's, pretty much your professional shooters are Grandmasters. And I know Grandmasters who are, elite world-class level shooters who can't teach. They can do the thing, but they can't teach. Yep. And even, and for what it's worth, these Grandmasters are beating everybody. They're beating all agencies, not just US, European, Asia, they're the top of the top shooters in the world. Not good instructors.
It takes a very special person to teach. Like, I say that about, like, teachers and stuff, like people give teachers a hard rap. It's like, dude, you couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be a teacher. There's no way. Because it takes a certain person to be able to convey information and have the patience to be a teacher. With firearms, I can do it because it's in a little bit smaller, controlled environment. But it takes a very special person to teach, because it's conveying information that you understand from a very high level, and you have to, I don't like to use the word dumb it down, but you have to bring it down to a level that somebody understands, and understand that you have to start them at this ground level, and you have to stay there for a very long time.
Right.
Because immediately you want to show them, like, all right, let's do this advanced thing, and let me show you how good I can do it,
Right.
And it's like, no, they need to just be able to shoot the gun first.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think that's also part of it, is that, you get them into this arena, and what may make sense to you as a person doesn't make sense to them. And I think that's the finesse of being a teacher. That's the art of being a teacher, is that you don't just try to force feed something down people's throat. And, the way I can see this in the gun community is like, okay, well, you have to, push and pull. You do 75% and 25% or whatever grip thing that, people prescribe things. And it's like, well, yes, that's what it feels like to you, but somebody else who doesn't work like that, you need to tell them a completely different way.
They almost have to come up with the idea themselves.
Exactly.
For in order for them to understand it, which is why we have these methods to teach, like the 75-25 thing. Like you said, we talked about this in a previous episode. Like, people never understand left hand grip as much as you or support hand grip.
Sure.
As much as you drive it into their head, they will never understand it as a new shooter. And so we talked about the drill the other day, where it's like, we tell them, like, hey, just hold the gun with your support hand real quick. I just want to check something. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna shoot the gun. And then they squeeze the hell out of the gun, and it's like, that's it. And then they're like, oh, that's how hard, So it's like, you came up with that. I didn't come up with that. So now then they're like, I get it, know. So it's as I could put my hand on the gun and show them, they still won't get it. It takes them to almost come up with the idea in order for them to understand it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and for reference, that wasn't my drill too. I stole that from a practical shooting training group when I went the last time.
Yeah.
So
and everybody steals it from somebody.
Absolutely. But it makes sense. And I'll train, I always talk about training people. So I like to think of myself more of as a coach instead of an instructor.
Sure.
But there are some guys who I'll help out with their technique, and I'll make them do it. It's like, okay, you want to do this, right? Put one round in the gun. You're gonna hold it as hard as you can, and I'm gonna actuate the trigger with my finger, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And panic.
Yeah, panic. They're bleeding on their hands. They're holding the gun so hard, and it's like, yep, there you go. Now you got it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So and then sometimes it takes like multiple instructors or multiple classes for them to either understand, or for, like you said, an instructor or a coach to maybe communicate something in a way that that it makes sense. Funny story, actually. The first time that you and I ever met was at Max's class, the first one he ever did. And we were doing, like, it's like a core memory that I have. We were doing like barricade drills, and like, I'm a shorter guy, and I could not, like, I'm telling you, when people were doing it, I was like, okay, this drill's not set up for me. Like, it's impossible. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't get around this barricade far enough and stay in this box to shoot this target. I'm gonna have to shoot it without being able to see the dot. And I remember, like, it was my turn to run the drill. And then I remember Brandon was like, oh, what's up, JP? And I turned around, I was like, oh, that's JP. That's the guy I've heard all about. Mm-hmm. And I, like, went and I ran the drill. And then you were behind me and you were like, hey, next time just do this. And I ran the drill and I was like, oh, I'm, like, all the way around this thing. So it just takes a coach, you know? And it was something that, like, maybe Max or Brandon wasn't seeing or wasn't able to communicate to me. Right. But it was like, it took another person to just be like, hey, all you have to do is this, and it makes sense, you know?
A short person.
Yeah. It's like, it's right. It was like somebody that it was on the same height as me. So it was, sometimes it takes different instructors to see stuff like that, you know, or to communicate something in a way that somebody understands it.
Yeah, well, and you find that all in the firearms community. You know, there are, especially in competition, there are people, you know, there are instructors that resonate better with others. Yes. You know, and I always talk about Max, you know, Max Michelle and Ben Steger in that light, because they are their teaching styles are completely opposite in a sense, but the results, you know, the results that you can gain from them are the same. Yeah,
it just is how if you're able to learn from their teaching methods.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's going to be the same for, you know, fundamental instruction. It's like, okay, if for some reason somebody's not resonating with you, then it's like, hey, why don't you try a lesson with Brandon or Dalton or whoever. Exactly. And if you're not in our local area, you know, go through the local, you know, the local instructors in your place and just find somebody that resonates with you that, you know, that can help you improve.
Yep, 100%.
So another thing that people talk about as a fear is law, right? So, you know, there are so many myths about gun law and what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. You know, I've heard people ask me with all seriousness, like, okay, well, when I bring my firearm to the range, do I need to disassemble it? Or like, do I need to do, you know, XYZ thing? Is it legal to carry it in my car? It's like, yes. Okay. Yeah. So just don't disassemble it. Like, let's just, you know,
don't touch it.
Make sure it's unloaded. Yeah. Okay. Don't load it up. Like, don't do it. And even if it's loaded, it's probably all right.
Yeah. Just leave it where it's at.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think that the law part is very intimidating for folks because, again, it's one of those things that it's such a controversial thing in the media. People get all up in arms about the law. So where do you start with that?
Yeah. So we get a lot of calls initially where it's like, hey, I'm coming to your range. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And then we explain like our specific range rules. And sometimes they'll ask about laws. So I won't get like into like Louisiana specific laws, but in Louisiana, you're allowed to carry a firearm in your vehicle because a vehicle is an extension of your home. If any of our out-of-state folks, your laws might be different, so please check your laws. But you can do whatever you want with a firearm in your vehicle in the state of Louisiana because it's technically your house. It's a moving house. But we give them our rules like, hey, you can 100% bring your gun to the range. When you put it in your car, try to put it in a case. Right. If you're unfamiliar with it and it is either if it's loaded, just put it in the case. Make sure you don't touch a trigger, and then leave it where it's at. You know, if you're, you know, kind of like unfamiliar with it, just leave it where it's at. When you get to our range, if it's in a case, perfect. Leave it in that case. If you do not have a case, come in first and we're going to either give you something. And if you tell us you're uncomfortable, we'll come outside with you and we'll figure it out. Right. We don't allow firearms outside of cases or unflagged firearms. And by flagged, I mean chamber flag, meaning that a visible device that we're able to see that the chamber's unloaded and there's no magazine in the gun. We don't allow firearms in our showroom that are outside of these conditions. So we have a big sign on the front door that says that. People still don't understand it. And we have people that walk in with guns 17 times a day, very polite about it. Like, hey, you mind if I grab that from you? And we do it in a polite manner. And then we instruct them like, hey, look, we just don't like people walking around. It's not that we don't trust you. We don't trust anybody. And then like accidental discharges. We don't want firearms that are in these conditions, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So, that's where we start is like, we get a lot of phone calls from that standpoint, as far as guns coming to the range. And then from an instruction standpoint, I want to say we don't do too much as far as laws go when I instruct people. But if there's any questions, I'm definitely there to answer them. Now, what we do get a lot of questions about is like they'll be like, hey, my husband bought me this gun. Is it okay for me to have it? It's like, and we'll answer the questions pertaining to Louisiana laws from that standpoint.
Right.
So again, I don't want to get too into it. That way I don't mislead anybody that's not from Louisiana. But we do instruct as far as Louisiana laws go in ownership of a firearm.
Yeah. I think, a point to add to this, number one, of course, clearly you can go to Google, any search engine that you like, search for your state and, firearm laws. Now, here's what's going to happen. It's going to take you to your state's website, and it's going to seem like you need a law degree to know what's going on in there. So you will also find some websites that are that will essentially dumb it down to normal person speak. And then you can infer what the law is from that. But what I would really suggest, if you are worried about the law, is to take a concealed carry class. Okay, number one, and then number two, if you're hunting, take a hunting class.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
You have to do those things.
Yeah,
well, you have to for hunting. Yeah, for sure, and concealed carry.
Yeah.
But yes, and pay attention to the law part. Right. That is the way to get acquainted with it. And yes, it eats up a Saturday, and yes, it's a whatever, it takes time, and you've got other things you want to do. But if you want to be a responsible gun owner, you got to go through that and understand the law. Yeah.
And thankfully, like almost all of our students that we have in our concealed carry classes, I like to open up by asking people like why are you here? And if you tell me you're here because I want my concealed carry license, I'm okay with that. Like I run my classes because when this is the way I start every class. It's like, look, my name's Austin. This is my background. I come from corporate America. I hated corporate America. I got out of corporate America and decided to do this with my life because I hated corporate America.
Right.
I didn't like meetings. I didn't like all this stuff. So I'm not going to run this class like a meeting. This is a give and take. At any point you have a question, if you don't agree with something that I said, speak up. Like, let's have a discussion about it. This is like, we're all adults here. I'm not going to talk at you for however many hours I have you here. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I want to hear your answers. I don't care if it's the wrong answer. I don't care if it's the dumbest answer in the world.
Right.
Just give me an answer. Give me something. Where's your mind at? And if you have an answer that is interesting to me, it's like, okay, well, take me through your thinking, because that's very interesting, So, but anyway, most of my students, what they actually end up telling me is, I'm here because I want to learn the legal side of it. And it's like, that's awesome. That's an awesome reason to be here, because what that tells me is you probably understand guns. You understand how carrying a firearm works. You're probably a decent shot, but you need to understand for your own kind of well-being and your can't think of the word, but once you get the laws down, you're good, So that's an awesome reason to take the class, especially with constitutional carry now being a thing. When people come to the classes and they're like, well, constitutional carry is a thing, but I need to understand the legal side. It's like, you, sir, or madam, you get it.
You already won.
You already won.
Yeah.
You're the reason, you're the reason that we teach these classes, and you're the people that I want around me carrying a firearm.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think that particularly with constitutional carry, everybody now feels like a little bit more cowboy, or at least a lot of folks that I run into. Oh, well, I don't need a class anymore. It's like, take the class.
Yeah.
Take the class.
Right, tell me where you can and can't carry a gun. And they're like, well, what you mean? It's constitutional carry. I can carry a gun anywhere. It's like, all right, this is why.
Take the class.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, there's an ancillary benefit, for having your concealed carry. You can bypass all of the, the NICS checks when you purchase a firearm, and for those who buy a lot of firearms, that's that's a bonus. That's a big time saver. But even more importantly than that, take the class. You have to know where you can and can't carry.
And reciprocity. It's for those who don't know what reciprocity is, it's the Louisiana has they reciprocate the their concealed carry license with a multitude of states. It's like 40 something states, meaning that your Louisiana concealed carry license is valid in, like, let's just say Texas. So if you have a Louisiana concealed carry license, you can carry in Texas concealed carry. With constitutional carry, you cannot do that. So by taking the class and getting the license, you get that reciprocity in the other states. And then when people try to justify to me like, well, I don't need that, it's like, okay, well then why are you carrying in Louisiana? Like, why is Louisiana more scary than like somewhere else?
Yeah.
If you're carrying, carry all the time.
Yep.
You know, don't pick and choose when you carry. You should be carrying everywhere you can.
Right.
So that's another thing is, and then they kind of understand like, oh yeah, well I probably need to get the license to carry in other states.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, gosh, and Louisiana is such a small state in comparison. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to drive to the beach in Florida. You're not going to go to Texas for work. You're not going to, you know, what I mean, like there's so many reasons that you would need. You go hunting in Arkansas or something like that. Like you're not going to bring your gun.
Yeah.
Tell me, yeah.
They can't convince us otherwise.
Yeah, for sure.
And they don't understand it sometimes, which is why, like I said, we love when they ask. It's like some people call and be like, hey, can you explain constitutional carry to me? It's like, absolutely. Yeah. Or why should I take the class still? You know, so we have no problem explaining that.
Yeah, for sure. One last fear that I know is like, this is one of those fears that I don't have anymore, but I know I used to, right? And it's not a fear. It's like more of an apprehension. Guns are loud.
Oh yeah,
guns, and some guns are super loud.
Yeah, so
right?
This is so I said that the fear of recoil was the 80%, right? Mm-hmm. This is the 20%.
Sure.
Like I'm not even going to say that there's anything else. There's like the three big ones for me are like that we get a lot fear of recoil, just the general fear of like the space they're in, kind of almost like being judged. So we can touch on that one after a little bit, maybe like the fear of like a public range. Mm-hmm. And then the sound, right? So this starts in the classroom. This is another big one that I spend a lot of time touching on, is that, okay, I'm going to provide you with ear and eye protection. When we cross this threshold, do not take your ear and eye protection off. And this is a point that I'm going to drive home to you. If at any point it is loud in there, and what I mean by loud is like it hurts your ears, you need to tell me. Don't try to suffer through it because it means that there's something wrong with your hearing protection. Mm-hmm. There should never be a point where it is painfully loud or even uncomfortably loud while we're in there. If that's the case, it means that there's something wrong with your hearing protection.
Right.
So what I tell my students is like, okay, when we get in there, I'm going to give you this hearing protection. If at any point it's painfully loud, all I want you to do is to smash your hearing protection into your ears, smash them, and try to get my attention. And we'll get outside the range and we'll figure it out.
Right.
And then I tell them like, look, I'm going to tell you right now what's going to happen. The first gun that goes off when you get in there, you're going to crap your pants. Like you're going to jump, and it happens every time. Yeah. And then so like they'll stand next to me and we'll be talking, and then boom, a gun goes off on another booth and they freak out. And I look at them, I'm like, are you okay?
Yep.
Was it painful or did it just scare you? And they're like, it just scared me. Okay, that's fine. You'll get used to that.
Right.
Okay. So yeah. And then once they either we indoctrinate them by shooting the gun next to them, or they shoot the gun, same thing. It's like after that first shot goes off, it's like, hey, how was your hearing protection? Like, is it good? Or was that like uncomfortable? And if it's uncomfortable, let's go outside and we'll figure it out. Because sometimes everybody's like head is different. Sometimes you need a different pair of earmuffs. Or usually what we'll do is we'll just double plug with electronic earmuffs. So like you can still hear me through the electronic, but you have plugs in as well. So we fix that with equipment. And then once they either fix that, they're like, oh, this is not bad. And then by the time the 6 or 7 shot goes off, they're just kind of little flinches, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but they get used to it. And then like the gun going off is not bad whatsoever. So, and then like we see, it's funny to watch like the progression of students. The big class that I had the other day of, that I was talking about of the ladies, started with like, the 22 was like scaring them. And then by the end of it, they had their son, I think he was like 16. And when I was teaching them, I grabbed a gun from like our safe, and he saw that we had a Desert Eagle. And so by the end of it, he was like, he's like, hey, do you like, can I shoot that Desert Eagle? And I was like, yeah, if you want to shoot it, you can shoot it.
Yeah.
So like they were all in the range, like videoing him, right? And like the Desert Eagle goes off, and that thing makes like your body feel like jello.
Right.
And then they're just standing there videoing him. So they went from a 22 scaring him to like the Desert Eagle going off, and they're just standing there, you know? So
enjoying
eventually you get used to it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's definitely the big one is, and it's explaining to them also what they're hearing. One thing I find with new students is that if you explain to them what they're experiencing, being that like, hey, I'm going to explain to you why guns go boom, and then they understand like, oh, so all I'm hearing is this expansion of gases. It's not, you know, some
Yeah, your projectile is not a grenade.
Yeah, it's like so it's not like your bullet hitting down range and like exploding. It's just this. It's just physics. It's an expansion of gases leaving the muzzle, and then they understand. They're like, oh, okay. I always thought it was the bullet that made it go boom. It's like no, that's a very common misconception, and it's like if you ever shoot outdoors, you can hear it a little bit better. But then they understand. They're like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. So I find that explaining things to people, how firearms work, and then like how the functionality. I do all that in classes too. Sure. Like especially new shooters, we do like safety, how a firearm works from, and then it's based off of what they have. So it's like, what's everybody using? Semi-automatics. We have one revolver. Okay, I'll do both of them. Mm-hmm. What makes it go boom? What makes it reload? Yada yada yada. And then they understand because we're humans, right? We want to understand how things work, right? Yeah. Or else they're kind of scary to us. But yeah, so that's definitely a big one. Is the boom.
For sure. And I think, the note that I will make here is that if you are someone who is bringing somebody to the range, all right, you can bring them muffs, but then also bring them some foamies, right? So because a lot of times brand new shooters, look, my wife, right? She's not a new shooter, but I mean, she double plugs just because, the sound is uncomfortable for her. 100%. And and how many rounds have I fired? I double plug all the time.
I do too. I do too. Like, especially like sighting in rifles, like even just like 308s. Like,
for sure. For rifle, 100%.
Yeah, double plug everything. And then another thing too, that probably either got them to this point, or if you're ever going to be experiencing this, if you're a new shooter out there, if somebody takes you shooting outdoors, bring ear protection. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, you don't understand how valuable your hearing is. Like, bring ear protection. Just because you're outdoors, it's not going to make it any better. Especially if you're shooting rifles and stuff like that. When you're hunting, you should still be wearing ear protection. They make electronic ear protection for a reason. It's better than your actual ears. Like, you can hear more things. So get a good set of electronic hearing protection. They even have ones nowadays that are like Bluetooth. So like, if you get like a phone call while you're hunting, your phone won't go off. It'll be in your ears. So make sure like you protect your hearing. Like, I lost 30% of my hearing in one day in a shooting thing, and like, I'm telling you right now, like, I wish that never would have happened because I was dumb to the fact that how loud guns were,
Sure.
So protect your hearing at all costs, and like, there's a reason like you see people that shoot guns 100,000 rounds a year, folks like us. Mm-hmm. If somebody asks us like, hey, I have a field, you guys want to come do like a range day? It's like, sure. Like, we are wearing hearing protection the 100%. Entire time. Yeah. Like, and it's like, oh, these, they must know something. It's like, yeah, guns are loud. Like, even with suppressors, like, guns are loud,
Yeah. Well, and that's, that's the other thing too. It's like, it doesn't make you any more of a man to shoot without hearing protection, right? Like, the last thing you want to do is get out there and try to, bring your buddies and like, hey, listen to this. So, the one time that I will take off Ear Pro is to listen to like a 300 blackout can. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'll 2 or 3 times, like, perfect. And then I'll put them back on. Yep.
Well, I did that yesterday with a guy. He wanted to buy a suppressor for a 300 blackout, and I was like, "Hey, I have the same exact suppressor. Do you want to go listen to it in the range?" Right. So, so like, I put like 10 rounds in the magazine, and so like, I fired off like 3 rounds with ear protection on, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna let the suppressor fill up with gas, and it's gonna be a little bit quieter." But I was like, since we're indoors, it's the first couple of rounds are still gonna be they're hearing safe, but they're gonna be a little loud. So we'll shoot 3, and then we took it off for like 2 rounds, and then it's like, all right, that's it. Because it's still not good for your hearing. No. Outdoors, it's fine. Yeah. It is technically hearing safe, but you still should be wearing like, hearing protection. But yeah, so there's caveats to it, like subsonic 300 blackout, subsonic 8.6 blackout, stuff like that. But you still should be wearing hearing protection.
Yeah, exactly. And 223, I mean, it's gonna crack.
You'll never suppress 5.56. It's just not possible.
Yeah. So wear hearing protection, even if you're shooting, suppressors, cans, whatever. Just protect your hearing.
Yeah, and like I said, for hunting, like, the biggest thing, like, people, I think I told a story the other day about the hunting club that the trip we went on, where like everybody was making fun of us for like our expensive guns and stuff. Right. The other thing they were making fun of us for was I like earmuffs. Like, I had my Peltors on. Sure. And they were like, dude, you wearing earmuffs? Like, yeah, I can hear better than you right now. Like, like I can hear something walking like 100 yards away in the grass. Like, I can hear better than my normal ears.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's why they make them, you know? So it's like you're actually disadvantaging yourself by not wearing these. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So you brought up one other fear that I hadn't thought about, public ranges.
Yes.
And like so to me, it was like, okay, well, yeah, public ranges are allowed. There are a lot of people with guns, but there's also this perception thing that you were talking about.
It's just like a gym.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing. Like, first time gym goers are like terrified of gyms because they're like, when I get in there, everybody's going to judge me. And like, I'll compare new shooters to like, people that are like on like a weight loss journey, or like skinny people that are like, I need to put on muscle mass. Like, they feel like they're going to be judged more, right? Because they're not like, they're new, right? But what they don't understand is it's exactly like gyms where like somebody that goes to a gym a lot and they're like very fit, and when they see like somebody on like a weight loss journey, or like a skinny person that's trying to put on muscle, and they see them coming into a gym, they don't think like, dude, look at this guy. They're like, hell yeah, brother. Like, if you need anything, you let me know. Like, this is awesome that you're here. And then so shooters are the same exact way with new shooters. Like when I go teach people in the range, especially like when I have like solo lessons, if there's like a member in the range, like they'll stop by and be like, hey, welcome. Like awesome. You're here. Like that's the environment that I'm not going to say all ranges, that we harbor at least. And that's the way it should be, is it's an inviting atmosphere where it's like, people are glad that you're here. And if you need anything, ask, you know? So, that fear that you have is it's genuine, and it's understandable, but it's just one of those things that it's going to take time to get past. But again, we try to make them understand, like, you're meant to be here. No one is judging you for being here. The only time you're going to get judged, just like a gym, is like if you're like 120 pounds and you go put like 315 on a bench bar, like somebody's going to be staring at you like, okay, I'm ready to help this person.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like, obviously like you walking around with a gun outside of your case, like people are going to be watching you.
And you're pointing it around.
Yeah, they're going to be watching you, you know, and they're going to be like, you know, so it's same exact thing. But if you're in a booth and like you're being safe, and like you tap the person next to you and you're like, hey, like I'm having trouble like loading this gun. Can you help me with it? No one's going to be like, oh, a new shooter. They're going to be like, yeah, absolutely. Like, this is awesome. Like, what's your name? Where are you from? Is this your first time shooting?
Right.
So that fear is genuine, but understand that like people want you there.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, and it's you know, in that help scenario, it's the complete opposite of what people may think. It's like if you ask somebody for help, they may tie you up for hours.
Yeah, you're gonna be wishing you never asked them for help. We actually see that at the range sometimes. Like people will come out of the range and they're like, they're not new shooters, but they're like maybe a little bit, or they're newer. It's not their first time, and they'll be like, hey, that guy that works for y'all, and there's like really nice. And I'm like, who? They're like, that guy is like Barney or somebody, and oh, he does not work for us. Like he's a nice guy. You found the right one.
You found
the right one. So, and like, oh, well, he was very nice to me and he helped me a lot. It's like, yeah, that's the environment that we harbor, especially like at Sentry. Like, and we tell our members that, especially like on Saturdays and stuff. If we see like a member walk into the range, I'll be like, hey, when you get back there, like, do me a favor, like, just keep an eye out for everybody, because like I might be shorthanded. I might not have my like I might have an RO, but like there's so many people. There might be like groups. You know, if there's one person in each booth, my RO has it. But like when there's like 3 people, or we don't allow 3, but like if there's 2 people in every booth, it's kind of hard to watch what that guy's doing with the gun and watch what his buddy's doing. So we ask our members like, hey, just keep an eye out. You know, if you see something, just say something. And that's something we teach in our class too, is that you're responsible for your own safety. If you see something, say something. Right?
Yeah. Don't leave it to the ROs. No. You know, if you see like, especially safety violations.
Absolutely.
You know?
Just like a gym. Like if you see somebody like sitting there with 315 on their chest and they can't get it up, like you're not just gonna be like, hey, gym staff, this guy's like struggling, like go help the guy, you know? So it's the same exact. I find it funny, like there's a very like similar environment with that too, like and then I always bring up golf. Like golf driving ranges are the same thing. Like people are terrified because they're bad. It's like if I see like, but we won't like it's kind of similar with shooting. Like there's people that will see you not struggling, but like you're not, may not be the best. Like I'm not going to go over there and be like, hey, try this, because like it's not my place. But if you ask me for help, it's like, yeah, I'd love to help, you know? And I'm one of those people too that's like, you're not going to get rid of me. Like now I'm here. Like I'm going to sit here until you're the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
when we see it in the competition realm too, right, is that, you know, there are so many folks who are who are super afraid of jumping into the competition because it's air quotes competition. I'm using my hands for those aren't watching on the video, and they're so intimidated by like, oh gosh, well I don't. They're two factions. Well, I don't want people to see how bad I am.
Yep.
Number one, or number two, there are people who are like, well, I want to win.
Yep.
But I don't know if I can win here, and all of this stuff, or whatever it is in their mind, or that they're, and look, and I get it. It's like if you're a military guy, you're super tuned up, or like a law enforcement person, you're super. Like
you think you're low drag,
exactly,
low drag,
and
high
then,
speed,
and then you have some 13-year-old kid beat
right.
you. It's tough,
and it's gonna happen. That's what we tell them. It's like you are gonna get beat by a 13-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's gonna happen. But the point of what we're doing here is that you're not comparing yourself to other people. You're comparing yourself to yourself on a week-by-week basis. Yeah. That's the purpose. Are you improving as an individual shooter? And if that's the case, then you're doing exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
If you live your life comparing yourself to other people, you're never going to succeed.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
And that's the thing. It's like, I'm calling you out, police and military who are afraid to come shoot competition. Shooting competition will help you improve. Yep. But it's just like the gym. Like you say, it's like the first day you're probably not going to go in the first time you ever go into a gym and pick up 425 pounds.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. But maybe in a year, if you train and you do what you're supposed to do.
There'll be some 16-year-old high school kid in there outlifting you.
Absolutely.
But it's like you're there to better yourself. You're not there to beat him, right?
Yeah.
Now like learning from those people, that's how you should do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not comparing yourself to them, but like if you see them doing something, you'd be like, hey, can you teach me how you do this, whatever? And there's a reason that the best shooters in the world are learning from the best shooters in the world.
Yeah.
Like they're not so proud that there's just like magic secrets, right? Like everyone's learning from everybody.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Well, and in the competition world, it's going to be the same thing like you talked about just in the public range. It's, once you ask for help, you're going to be inundated with help.
That's right.
Everybody wants you to succeed. Right. Everybody wants you to be safe. Everybody wants you to do the best you can.
Yep.
And in our club especially, super helpful. Everybody's super helpful.
Yep.
So don't. I guess my thought to everybody is like, don't let that fear stop you from coming. Particularly, and again, I keep calling out law enforcement and military. You know why? Because they're the ones who need it the most. It's like if anybody here is like needs to be the best shooter in the world, it's the people who carry a gun for a living.
That's what I tell them is like, if you mess up a report, you're fine. If you mess up the shooting portion of it, you could lose your life.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Or somebody else could lose their life.
Exactly. Wrongly. Yeah. Right. Or exactly. And last thing you need to do, get put in that situation, is to think about, line up the sights, press the triggers. Like,
it should be muscle memory. Because that's what that's another thing. Like I tell, once we get into like defending yourself with shooters, is like everything that I've taught you up until this point, when it comes to time to defend yourself, you're not going to remember. Yeah. Like your heart rate's going to go to 120, and the only thing you're going to have is muscle memory.
Right.
So that's why we train. Like there's a reason that like the best of the best are putting X amount of rounds down range, is because when the buzzer goes off or when shit hits the fan, all you have is muscle memory. There's no thought process that's going to go behind it, and you're going to do with what you're trained to do. Right. So that's why we encourage law enforcement and military personnel so much. It's like, I know this is not what you do for a living, but when if this time ever comes, you're going to need to know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I think that's good. I think we've covered a lot of the fears, and, giving people some techniques for how to do it. Of course you can dry fire, you can, do those kinds of things. And we'll get into actually our next show. We're going to talk about, training plans and stuff like that. But I think initially it's just getting over those first fears to get you into the range, wherever you're going to shoot.
Yep.
Right. And to get you, because all of these fears are normal
and very valid.
And yeah, exactly. And just because we haven't had it in a long time doesn't mean that they're not real.
Yeah.
Right. So, all that to say is that, yes, we are empathizing that, yes, you are having this fear. You can get over it. It is something that you can do. You can fire a firearm safely within the law and protect yourself, or have fun doing it, or whatever it is you want to do. You just have to have the right environment to do so.
That's right.
You know, and so finding that right environment, you know, if you're lucky enough to be around us, you know, come to Sentry, do that. If you're not, then clearly, you know, look around, find the range that fits with you, find the people that fit with you, that kind of thing, and just get out there and shoot.
Yep, cool. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Austin. This is a good one, and we'll catch everybody next time.